This is my presentation on teaching within systems of reform and accountability. And I chose as the reform to focus on school choice. Educational policies shape every classroom, whether we notice them or not. When I first started looking into educational reform, I realized that so much of what happens in schools isn't actually determined by the individual teachers. There's the standards, testing requirements, accountability systems. The district has their expectations, and then, of course, there's state policies that we all know a lot about. All of these influence what happens in the classroom every day. And as teachers, we really have to balance all of those expectations and still make sure that the students are engaged, supported, and actually learning the material that we're trying to teach them. That's something I think a lot about. I never want policies to become more important than the students who are sitting in front of me wanting to learn about history or math or whatever we're teaching. The reform movement wanted to focus on is school choice because it's something that I've experienced from several different perspectives. It gives families the opportunity to find learning environments that better fit their children's needs. This is something obviously very important. Before becoming a history teacher, I worked with students who struggled in traditional classrooms, including students with autism, ADHD, Tourette syndrome, other learning difficulties. Now I teach at a public Montessori charter school, and because of both of these experiences, I've seen firsthand that not every student learns best in the same environment. Sometimes a different setting can completely change a student's confidence and success, and I genuinely believe that families should have options because every child deserves a place where they can thrive. What I don't like seeing, and why I really am focusing on this, is the sort of weaponization I'm seeing of school choice and making it more about defunding public school programs. So choice can create opportunity, obviously. I'm very much into choice in all aspects of my life, but it can also create unintended or hopefully unintended consequences. Even though I support school choice, I don't think it's been implemented healthy in Florida, especially in Florida, I should say. Instead of simply creating more opportunities, it often feels like traditional public schools are being weakened in order to strengthen these alternative options. When funding follows students out of public schools, those schools have fewer resources to serve the students who remain, the larger population of students. I don't think school choice itself is the problem. I think it's the way it has been used politically. We should be investing in all schools instead of forcing them to compete with each other for survival, creating this sort of gross class system. Accountability is obviously very important, especially in schools. They should be responsible for the students' learning. The challenge is making sure that test scores never become the only measure of success. Taxpayers, parents, community, everyone, these, we call them stakeholders a lot in our school. They deserve to know whether schools are helping the students to learn. The problem is, again, those standardized tests. I grew up in the era of No Child Left Behind, teaching the test, the FCAT being drilled into my head. Great teachers do so much more than just raise test scores. They build relationships, they inspire curiosity, they help students develop confidence, and they teach skills that are not always reflected on an exam. When schools become too focused on just the test, it's easy for creativity and meaningful learning to take a backseat or even be forgotten. So the classroom that I am trying to create is where students are going to be engaged. Yes, we're going to adhere to the standards. We're going to have discussions, projects, games, simulations, lots of things I like to do there. This is probably where my own philosophy comes through the strongest. I will obviously teach the standards. I focus my whole curriculum around them, but I don't think that they should dictate every instructional decision. I want students debating historical events, creating projects, like I said, making games, playing games, designing their own games, making presentations, finding connections that matter to them personally. One of the core elements of a good education there is finding those connections. That's when history becomes something they remember instead of just something they're memorizing for a test. They're going to forget the next week, the dates that they never cared to remember anyway, all of the 50 states and their capitals. Engagement doesn't replace rigor, it actually strengthens it. Equity. I love equity. It's one of those fun words that we're really not even allowed to talk about anymore. It means providing students with the support they need to be successful. Nothing more, nothing less. Different students need different pathways, but every student deserves high expectations. One thing I've learned from working with students who have very different learning needs is that fairness does not always mean treating everyone exactly the same. So again, equity is recognizing that students come into our classroom with different strengths, challenges, and experiences. Some will need scaffolding, some benefit from visual supports, others simply need more time or a different way to demonstrate what they know. My goal is never to lower my expectations. Again, everyone deserves that higher level there, but to remove the unnecessary barriers. So every student has the opportunity to meet those expectations. I think this is best summarized in the example of the wheelchair ramp. You would never take away a wheelchair ramp from someone who needs it. You're not giving them a leg up in the world, you're just leveling the playing field. Educational reform will continue to revolve. My responsibility is to advocate for students, remain flexible, and create a classroom where curiosity, equity, and meaningful learning always comes first. These policies will continue to change throughout my career. Standards will change, assessments will change, accountability systems will continue to evolve. Those things are out of my control, largely out of my control. What I can control is the classroom environment that I create every single day. I want my students to leave curious, confident, and excited to keep learning about my stuff or, just learning in general. I want them to have a thirst for knowledge. If I can balance accountability with meaningful instruction while always keeping students at the center of my decisions, then I'll feel like I'm doing the job the way it should be done.